was crafted by the then president of Yugoslavia, Josip Tito. And this man had just established Yugoslavia as a nation coming from the mighty USSR. He was really disturbed by two things. One, how to maintain the independence of Yugoslavia, but two, how do you put Yugoslavia on the map and that promotes its sovereignty? So it was very tricky at that time, because this is a time when we had just come from the Second World War, and then there was the Cold War, which came in immediately, and the world therefore through the Cold War was divided into two blocks. We had the Western Bloc, which was capitalist, and then the Eastern Bloc that was communist and then socialism. So at the end of the day, he discovered that neither of them would keep his country. So he started looking up for friends, and the first person he landed on was the then Prime Minister of India, Nehru. India had also gone through the same experience, because India had gotten its independence a little bit earlier in 1947, but he followed with a very big turmoil between India and Pakistan, which led to the separation of that India colony into two countries of India and Pakistan. And for that matter, there was a very big thing to look for sovereignty. Then the third person was Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt. Egypt had gotten its independence in 1954. And then the second African country was Ghana, and they made a group of five, the first five. That is the group that had the first summit or conference in Belgrade in 1961 and formed a non-aligned movement. A non-aligned movement because they did not want to go west or east. But mainly, you know, with the coming of those two blocks that I talked about, there was also military wings. Then there was NATO for the Western group and Warsaw Pact. And therefore there was production of nuclear, which was threatening a lot of peace, and it would have been very dangerous for countries like Yugoslavia and many African countries that were just getting independence. So that group decided to say they were non-aligned, so that they could promote their sovereignty, they would promote peace, and also to fight for other countries which had not yet gotten independence. But Nkrumah added in a little thing. How do you also help to fight or protect these young states from neo-colonialism? Because neo-colonialism is a term that was coined by Kwame Nkrumah. So non-alignment movement therefore begins as a force which wanted to balance the struggle between the West and the East. And therefore, it mainly involved the countries that had been former colonies of different powers, but mainly countries that were developing. So we have countries in South America, we have countries in Africa, and countries in Asia. And of course, the number grew. So how does Uganda come in? Uganda joins non-aligned movement in 1964 in the second conference in Cairo, which was chaired by Gamal Abdel Nasser. And since then, Uganda has been a very strong member of the non-aligned movement, and it is something that goes together with the idea of Pan-Africanism. So whatever Africans decide, normally Uganda follows. So non-aligned movement grew from strength to strength, from the first summit in Belgrade, the second summit in Cairo, the third in Zambia, and it has come up to the 19th, when we find it today with 120 countries in Kampala. And I think after this summit we shall have 121, because Sudan is going to join at this summit.
All right, and from the five that doctors mentioned here, Yugoslavia, Indonesia, Ghana, India, Egypt, to a group of 120 countries. Not only that, Africa has 53, Asia 39, the Americas or Caribbean with 26, then Europe with 2 of those in NAM. Now, let me get to Patricia here. Patricia, when you look at BRICS now, you're representing BRICS in this situation. How does BRICS come into the picture?
Thank you. As you already heard, I represent the International Municipal Forum of the BRICS countries. Originally, BRICS, from the time it was coined in 2010, it had the big 5 emerging economies of China, of Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa. And just this month, more countries have joined, including African countries like Egypt. Now, the forum is basically to integrate countries that are not specifically part of BRICS into development. It's more about the development of regions and territories. But at the top of BRICS, there's what they call multilateralism, a new world order where different countries can be able to influence the economic and political shapes of the world. Right now, the order of the world is unipolar, with the United States of America or the West being the only dominant power. But for sure, there is no consensus of what the configuration of the world is like. And when you look at what has been happening, these countries of the global south came out and said, we need to have more countries making decisions. We need to have more countries influencing the economies and the political shape of the world. And if you look at NAM, this is what they believe in. Because one of the guiding principles of NAM is diversity and inclusivity, that we are becoming very vulnerable to one unipolar world. We are becoming very vulnerable to one force from the West, that countries need to come together to collectively define their problems, because we are going through an identity crisis as Africa, but also as developing countries. So in the bid to make sure that we have South-to-South cooperation, which is at the heart of NAM, this is where BRICS comes in, because we feel that indeed we need a more multipolar world where countries can be able to protect their independence vis-a-vis the power center from the West, and be able to organize themselves into a more central and multipolar world.
All right. Doctor, your observations, we're on the 19th summit now. From the time NAM set foot, what could be, your observations in relation to the to the discussions or the arguments that have so far been made? Because when you look at some of the objectives here of NAM, there is one that looks at opposing colonialism, imperialism, and racial discrimination. The racial discrimination point is one that has actually taken ages of fights and everything, but it does seem like another hard battle to win. What would be your observations in relation to how far the states under NAM have come?
Just like any other organization, for sure, NAM came up at a time which was very, very difficult. Remember, that was the time of the Cold War. And the Cold War had its own mechanisms of doing things, and therefore fighting any force that would try to neutralize this big thing that had developed in the world. So the first thing NAM did, and which I think they succeeded, was to really struggle that countries that had not yet gotten independence do get independence. And indeed, in the 60s, many of the African countries got independence up to the 70s, of course, with the last one in 1994, that is South Africa. So each country, especially from the South or the Third World, which got independence, automatically became part of NAM. Then the first challenge, the second challenge which followed that was the conflict in Congo, where there was a conflict between Kasavumbu group and the Lumumba. trying to break off, and that almost divided Africa, because Africa had to divide itself into two groups. We had the Casablanca group and the Libreville group. But NAM managed to mobilize the Casablanca group and put it together. And therefore, although there was a crisis in Congo, it did not degenerate into a secession. Although, unfortunately, Lumumba and many other people lost their lives. But that was something that NAM did very well. Then sovereignty, NAM has been a big force in struggling for sovereignty, whereby countries are respected for what they are. They can manage their own affairs. And the countries like Yugoslavia, which was the pioneer of NAM, really tried to help these countries, because you cannot have sovereignty when you do not have political and the economic forces. So to try and develop African countries, and I think Yugoslavia did a very big job. India also later helped and in fighting for sovereignty and independence and many other things. Then the other area has been a voice in the United Nations organization. You know, in the United Nations organization, most of the things are normally, or policies are passed basing on groupings and lobbies. So NAM has become a very big lobbyist in dealing with the African, dealing with the third world general interests, and they have become a force. The only place where they have failed to penetrate is the Security Council. And I think in this summit, it is one big thing on the table.
That is going to be discussed.
That is going to be discussed. And the beauty is that in this summit, the Secretary General of the United Nations is there, and the President is also there, or the Chairman is also there. And therefore, we hope that that is going to be pushed, and it has been one big struggle, because the Security Council is a very big decision-making body, especially on matters of security. NAM has also tried to deal with the issues of racial segregation, and therefore they were a very big force against the fighting against apartheid in South Africa. So they did a very big job, and that's why you find South Africa is a very strong member of NAM. But there has been an illusion on the state of Palestine. That one has disturbed NAM for some time, because from 1957 there have been a struggle between Israel and the Palestine,
which is also part of the discussions as well this time.
Yeah, it is also part of the discussions, and I'm happy that just the beginning of last week, South Africa went to court, very bold, and took Israel to court, saying what Israel is doing in the Gaza, and the general to Palestinians is what it amounts to genocide. And many NAM countries have supported and endorsed that, and we hope the hearing is going on. We hope that something good will come out of it. Now, for the sake of Uganda, you know, when you are in an organization like NAM, your weight matters. Your weight matters on what is happening there. And you know, we have been there as a small country, but I think now I'm beginning to see that Uganda is growing from strength to strength, from a level of just being a member to now being a host and therefore a chairperson. We hope that Uganda is going to leverage from that, and we start benefiting from NAM.
Okay, speaking of benefits, let me get back to Patricia. Patricia, when you look at NAM, I need to understand the relevance. My viewers would wish to understand the relevance of this. We've seen all these particular preparations for NAM this particular year, how the government has been quick to make sure that they do the final touches and everything. But how relevant is NAM, and which position does it place Uganda as a country?
Like Doctor said, I must say, if you ask me about relevance, NAM has had their shine, because like you see, most of those countries, we almost have no colonies right now. Most of the countries are independent, but also secondly, we've seen the paradigm shift from just wanting decolonization to more into economic because NAM was the one that led to the forming of is it called the new international economic order. And third, one of the objectives of NAM was always to create a voice or a platform for these countries. Because if you look at the United Nations, the countries are not able to express themselves like they would in NAM. But secondly, he talked about the Security Council. The big 5 countries have veto powers, in that even if these countries came to a conclusion of something, or if they said anything, these countries determine what is done in the Security Council. But also, if you look at, we have what we call the NAM News Network. It was an initiative of NAM to make sure that countries are able to also report on the news and all that. So those are the positives. Now, as much as the idea of non-alignment is very relevant, there is a big however. We ask ourselves, can NAM, for example, negotiate for the freezing of the African debt? It's a big issue, because when you look at the 1950s in the Bretton Woods Conference, they took the most important economic United Nations functions and scrapped them from the UN agenda and transferred them to IMF and the World Bank. We are victims of the World Bank. Recently, when we signed the LGBTQ
the anti-homosexuality
law.
law.
Yes. World Bank threatened to withdraw debt. I think they actually withdrew. Now, that is what we ask ourselves. But second, we ask ourselves, can NAM, the statesmen in NAM, work on Libya as it is falling, and NATO is not able to say, please stop? We also ask ourselves that at the heart of NAM, they have the non-nuclear proliferation, the disarmament of nuclear weapons. But we have Iran and India in the organization, in the movement. So we ask ourselves, is NAM able to go on with this?
Okay.
And we also ask ourselves, can the countries in NAM be able to come out strongly against terrorism without justifying it? So there are a number of questions that need to be asked. This is the need hour to call NAM to come back to the drawing table. We need a new strategy. We need revitalization. We need to breathe into NAM. They need to come out strongly and see the problems, the issues. If at that time, maybe before the 20th century, maybe the biggest problem was decolonization. But is it still the problem right now?
No, it isn't.
Exactly. So that means that we need to make reforms in NAM and be able to tackle the contemporary issues that are affecting these countries. And secondly, I feel that the criteria for admission of countries into NAM is a bit liberal. But this is not what it is supposed to be. Because if India does not attend 4 consecutive summits, what disciplinary measures are there for such countries?
Among the founding members.
Exactly. So I would like to say that the relevance of NAM is indeed, NAM is very relevant, like it was and it is today. What the critics miss when they say, some people say that NAM has become just a discussion group for countries. But I think that more than ever, NAM is very relevant because these countries have to continuously protect themselves, protect their independence. But I would like to say that there has been a divide between the visions of NAM and the globalization of the world. The new things that are coming, the world is becoming. So we need a new strategy, maybe from an alignment to strategic alignment.
Okay, and in a minute, I'll go to Dr. Robert Ojambo. In a minute, your parting shots as we're winding up with our conversation this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for me, I will use these few minutes to just talk about how Uganda can can benefit from the non-aligned movement. Number one, we have to educate our people The people need to be educated to get to know what this non-alignment means, so that it is just not a politician's thing, which is happening with the politicians. They sit there. They need to be briefed. For example, after the summit, can we get the resolutions and they are publicized and people read them so that we can use them for accountability? Number two, publicity should not only be in political circles, it should be in educational circles. These are things that should be sung in schools, in universities. I expected there would be now debates, people debating about these things, people researching and presenting papers. For example, we would have had an academic summit. Like we have the business and these others, would have also had the academic, because the people who started this NAM were serious academicians. They were serious readers.
That is a point from the bond.
Who had the philosophy. So at the end of the day, this is something we need to do. Then the other thing is, as my colleague has said, how do we in NAM and Uganda make sure that we promote what NAM wanted to do? Democracy, because democracy, I think, is good for everyone. Every human being needs democracy. What can we do to promote democracy? What can we do to promote peace? Kwame Nkrumah was one of the promoters of peace in NAM, and he once gave a statement that if you want to promote peace, prepare for, if you want to avoid war, prepare for peace and promote peace. So we need to see that we don't attack each other. As we talk now, we are coming from Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan is 83 square miles into Almeria, invading a country. We should avoid such things. Like right now in East African community, you remember this morning, they have closed the border between Rwanda and Burundi. We need to avoid such things. But as a country, people need to be educated that in NAM you don't just get food to eat, you don't just get some little money, but it's something that can promote trade, something that can promote interstate cooperation and many other things that we can benefit from. Thank you so much for hosting me here.
All right, and now let me get to Patricia Chishemeire. What would be your parting shots in relation to our NAM Summit 2024?
My observation,
okay.
When we hosted CHOGM in 2007, I was in my primary 6 in my village. But I can tell you, even the least person in the farthest village knew CHOGM was coming to Uganda, and there was that pomp everywhere, renovations and the roads, and some of the places were named after CHOGM. We even have bars everywhere in the world named after CHOGM. And this is just 53 British colonies, or 55. But NAM is 2/3 of the United Nations. NAM has been in place for 63 years. NAM is the largest next to the United Nations. But when I ask 10 people out of 10, only one person can be able to tell what is NAM. Now my call to Uganda, it's a big shot for Uganda to be able to host this movement, but as it is pending chairmanship, when we take up the chairmanship as Uganda, one of the things that we need to know is to provide information about NAM. The public needs to know what NAM is about, what is their role, and what they want to do. That will be a good thing. But secondly, I would also want to mention here on this TV that as much as there is no more colonization, but I would like to say that colonization has taken another form. Many countries, developing countries, have a high tendency of protectionism. We are not able to export our things to these countries. For example, the United States of America cannot get steel and uranium from a country like China. And secondly, we are being blamed for pollution. They are saying developing countries, but is it the truth? Are we the one causing the biggest part of pollution? No, we are not. So what I would like to say is that NAM is relevant. It has always fought for freedom of judgment, and whether it is one block or two, it is still significant. Okay. Despite the setbacks, NAM needs to come together strongly and reinforce and reform and revitalize their objectives and principles. And then everything will be okay.
All right, thank you very much. That has been Patricia Kishemere. Patricia serves as the senior representative of the International Municipal Forum of the BRICS Plus. She has been here together with Dr. Robert Ojambo. Dr. Robert Ojambo is a senior lecturer at the Department of History, Chambogo University, and in that particular regard for the students of the African nationalism. These are conversations that you will definitely have a clue about in relation to how far the non-aligned movement has come. I'm Joram Paul Sonko, and you're still watching Good Morning Uganda. This is UBC, and of course, as you can definitely see, what is coming in as of now on your screen is footage coming in from the Speak Resort in Munyonyo, because when you look at some of the updates that we do have for you so far early this morning, amidst the onset of the Namungona flyover construction, of the roundabout, which is one of the key areas slated for diversion due to the ongoing non-aligned movement summits. The normal traffic conditions, according to the updates that we do have so far, have prevailed, and only that our journalists did also cover some videos during how people have actually, as you can definitely see what is on your screen,